Morning. I am an artist, and I'm sure to many of you that's no surprise. You've probably seen me on stage, dancing, singing, and acting, or rocking out on various instruments with my band. If you've spent any real time around me, you've probably also experienced some of my more annoying art-based habits firsthand. These range anywhere from doodling on tests, homework assignments, desks, and my skin, to drumming on tables with my fingers and or pencils, to non-stop singing in class, in the bathroom, and in the lunch line. In past years, I was the high-pitched voice combating Hessies that you always heard and probably turned around to glare at in chapel. I'm the culprit behind half-decorated sticky notes left on the desk in Mr. Price's classroom. And if you stay long enough, I'm the source of show tunes echoing off the math hallway's walls after school. I have always been in love with the arts, and though my sister Zoe likes to pretend that it was her idea first, growing up to be an artist of some kind was a dream of mine since I was very little. As a result, my very generous parents enrolled me in years of ballet, tap, jazz, singing, acting, and visual art lessons. They sat through countless hours of terrible shows filled with offbeat and tone-deaf toddlers, some of which I'm going to share with you right now. This is me, around 5 years old, performing in a tri-annual group concert. And if you look closely, Alex Chabin is the boy sitting behind me. He and Max were often castmates of mine.
Coming out around the world. Are you ready for a brand new beat? Woohoo! Summer's here and the time is right. We're dancing in the street. We'll be dancing in Chicago. Woo! And in New Orleans. In New York City. Girl. All we need is music. Sweet music. There'll be music everywhere. There'll be swinging and swaying, and records playing, and dancing in the street.
Born for the stage, am I right? Though I am and always have been really shy, I could never hold back the joy that creating or performing gives me. It's my favorite thing to do and my greatest catharsis. Before Brooks, I attended Pike, a pre-K through 9th grade private school in Andover, Massachusetts. My graduating class had just over 60 members, so after nearly 10 years, you can imagine we were all pretty close. I had always had the same group of friends, and though we had our fights, I considered our bond unbreakable. However, something changed in 8th grade. Maybe it was due to being placed in different classes, or that we had all spent a little too much time together. I don't know, but somehow each of my friends had made new friends, leaving me alone. I remember clearly standing with them one day at recess, talking and laughing like we used to, until I thought I heard my name from across the playground. I looked towards the source to no avail, then turned back to see all the girls I had just been standing with, giggling and running away from me at full speed, leaving me alone. This happened to me quite often that year, but it crushed me nonetheless. We were only allowed to be in 3 places during recess at Pike: outside, the library, or if we were lucky, the art room. So to avoid forced isolation, I locked myself in there. That year, every free moment at school was spent throwing myself into my art in an attempt to control the growing depression I felt inside. Each recess, I sat alone at my table, replacing my ex-friends with Sharpies, pastels, and watercolors, scribbling my emotions onto paper and wondering what I had done to end up there. I thought I was helping myself, but in reality, I had taken what I loved and turned it into something dangerous. I shifted from pens and paper to safety pins and razor blades, marking each sorrow in a permanent white line on my wrist. I took apart all my pencil sharpeners in search of more effective weapons and used my knowledge of bracelet making from the summer to create an inconspicuous cover-up for the cuts on my arm. That year was one of the lowest points of my life, and when I came to Brooks only a few months later, my mental state had only mildly improved. Luckily, after only a few weeks into my freshman year, the older members of the fall play seemingly adopted me. We hung out together before and after rehearsals, and they introduced me to all of their friends. I finally had a steady group of people to rely on again, and that felt awesome. But it wasn't enough to cure my depression. Without access to an open art studio, I looked instead to the music center for an escape. It actually turned out that that's where all of my friends like to spend their free time anyway, so instead of hours alone with my thoughts, we played and sang together, and I even coerced some of them into teaching me basic versions of 4 new instruments. The arts were again my source of happiness, and I was doing great. Though I still wasn't perfectly healthy again, time increased exponentially between my relapses, and my wounds, both physical and emotional, began to heal. Earlier this year in Latin, we discussed the concept of ate, a feature of epic stories that describes the hero's fatal flaw, or a significant positive trait that can have negative side effects. Though I wouldn't consider myself nearly comparable to Hercules, Odysseus, or Aeneas, I too have an ate, and that is my love of the arts. I mentioned before that if you've spent significant time around me, you'll have noticed some of my habits. Well, one of the ones I left out is how often I complain about having lost my voice. I love to sing, so much that it's actually detrimental to my health. I'll do it incessantly until my throat becomes scratchy, my range weakens, and talking leads to coughing fits. Instead of going on vocal rest like I should, I whine while pounding cough drops and throat coat tea until the minimum vocal ability returns, then do it all over again. This might be fine if I didn't perform so often or my artistic abilities weren't so connected to my health. But unfortunately for me, that's not the case. As Mr. Griffith so keenly pointed out to me earlier this year, when I lose my voice, I spiral. Not singing makes me sad and takes away a place to channel my anxiety. I then panic about not being good enough because my voice won't do what it normally can. So to compensate, I push myself even harder. It's kind of an inescapable cycle of musical doom. However, I am lucky enough to have friends who love, support me, and tell me to shut up when I need to, because ceasing to sing now means I can sing better later, and that will make me so much happier. As I've grown up here at Brooks, I have learned new methods to hone my passion in ways that are more helpful than harmful. For example, here is what I call my AP Chem Panic Doodle. AP Chemistry is by far the hardest class I have ever taken, and actually caused me to rethink my whole life plan of becoming a research scientist. I still love chemistry, but there are times when it feels like the whole world is crashing down around me and breaking into atoms, or molecules, or elements, or I don't know. Anyway, the world is crashing down when I can't do simple stoichiometry or a pH calculation. In those moments, I flip to the back of my binder and let it all out. Each abstract line, or dot, or spiral that I add brings me peace, and reminds me that as long as I try my best, I will not disappoint Mr. LaFond too much. Though I don't have designated coloring pages for all my classes, if you were to flip through my notebooks, you would see similar things. Margins filled with scribbles, dots and swirls, or variations of the same flower over and over again, in an effort to remain calm when I get lost in class, or to simply keep myself focused. When drawing isn't the right kind of release, I turn to my ukulele, acoustic guitar, electric guitar, bass guitar, drums, piano, or mandolin. Maybe I'll learn a new song that reflects my mood, revisit an old favorite, or just play really, really loudly until everything goes away. It's in these times that I'm sure my family regrets the fact that I am not a boarder. The arts have been such an integral part of my life, and I have done my best to use my passion as a healing power for others the way it is for me, beginning with my grandmother. Now deep in the throes of Alzheimer's and barely able to recognize her own children, let alone her grandchildren, my Grammy resides at Brightview Assisted Living in North Andover, where we visit her every few months. She too was passionate about music, and I can attribute much of my elementary piano and vocal knowledge to her. As her disease caused her mind to fade so much that any conversation is a struggle, my mom encourages me to bring my ukulele on every visit so we can at least connect again through song. We sit for hours in her tiny little room, me struggling to sight read classic Sinatras or Manilows, or completely making up songs my mom suggests but I have never actually heard. Occasionally, my mom will join in singing until I confuse her with a harmony, and if we are lucky, Grammy will tap her foot along or even hum a little. I will never forget the first time I stumbled through the classic hymn, Morning Has Broken, to look up and see a simple grin of recognition on her face. That feeling is what drove me to work with my friends sophomore year on creating the Blast from the Past cast, a musical cabaret of oldies but goodies, a show written, orchestrated, and choreographed by us to be performed at Brightview that winter and again the following year. Each performance was an overwhelming success, and I learned that it really is difficult to keep singing when you're smiling so hard your face hurts. Luckily for me, my audience of gleeful senior citizens did not take "sing along if you know it" suggestion lightly, and instead carried me through to the final chord of Elvis's "Can't Help Falling in Love" 2 years in a row. Even my barely present Grammy did her best to join in at each of the shows. I don't plan to get an art degree in college, and I certainly don't intend to pursue it as a career. But I know that whatever I'll end up doing with my life will have to leave me enough time to explore creatively on the side. My addiction to the arts is inescapable, and though I'll never be able to dance like Kat Saunders, sing like Katie O'Brien, or draw like Maddie Shea, it doesn't matter. I've found what I love. Arts get me through the day at my lowest, keep me grounded at my highest, and connect me to others who also aren't afraid to belt in hallways, use their skin as sketch paper, or make fools of themselves on stage. I'm not going to stand here and tell you to go out and find your passion like I have. There are much more important things to focus on right now, like AP Chem homework and sleep. But I really hope that at some point in your lives it comes to you. I hope you find the thing that keeps you going and you hold on to it. You never know what kind of curative powers it may have. Thank you.